Well, welcome everyone. So glad to have you joining us this evening. I'm sitting here with Leigh Mackenzie, excited to talk more with her about her story. So Leigh, you and your family have been part of the Crossing for a really long time. Can you tell me a little bit about your family and kind of what you guys do here at the Crossing?
Yeah, we've been with the Crossing. It's my only church, really. I was baptized here. My husband was baptized here. My son was baptized here. And we've been here for about 17 years now. And we started off wondering what this church was all about. Going, I don't understand the hand raising, happy, clappy. And that was back when we were in the old gym, and it was tight. We had 4 services, 3 and then 4 services on Sunday. And Chris and I just wondered, what in the world was this all about? And we've been here since. Throughout the years, we've done, I think, everything from greeting to guest services to being, VBSs and children's ministry. I don't know what we haven't done at this point.
Yeah, you did student ministry for a long time too, right?
High school ministry.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the studio for a really long time. And so Chris and I have gone through this together and done ministry, missions. And Chris is now, he's been an elder for a long time, and he's been chairman of the elder board for the last 3 years and is now stepping down to let somebody else do it. Yeah, so we've been here this is our home. It's always been our home, and these are our people, so.
That's awesome. Well, so this year at Rise, we're kind of speaking about these periods where God is at work in our lives, and maybe they're difficult, maybe he seems silent, and it really causes us to have to really trust. And we might be wondering, like, where are you, God? Maybe how are you working? So I know you've been walking through a season of your life where it's been real growth and trust that have been required of you. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah. I think all of us this year have gone through a season of growth and trust and saying, God, where are you? Are you at work right now? This last season, it's been about a year. I feel like God had been prepping me for about a year. Back in September last year, I met a friend who she and I started talking back and forth, and she was a retired psychologist, and we were accountability writing partners. She had already written a couple books, and as we continued to work together and see how do we grow our spiritual gifts, how do we minister more strongly, she kind of saw a lot of red flags as we were talking, and suggested very gently and kindly, have you ever considered getting some trauma counseling? And I said, what for? I'm good. And so it kind of started me down the road of going to counseling and really digging in deep to try to figure out why is it I am the way I am. And so that kind of started the process of huge growth, huge just, God, this has got to be you, because it can't just be me in it. And so it's been a very interesting year.
Interesting. Okay, great. So how have you seen God at work in the midst of this last year?
Oh my goodness. The greatest thing that I feel like I had the opportunity to know was that at the very beginning of it, God had kind of spoken it into existence that this would be a healing season for me, a profoundly deep healing season. And I thought, okay, I trust you. I trust you. How deep are we going to go? And one of the brilliant things he did was, I call it the run through the valley of the shadow of death. And I was waking up one morning, and I remember just feeling, I heard, valley of the shadow of death again and again. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I love Psalm 23. Who doesn't? But what is that about? And I felt like he's just prompting me to go for a run. Go for a run. And I'm like, run? Do I have to run? He's like, yeah, just go for a run. So I get up, I go. And he instructs me, he just says, go a mile. I need you to go a mile and turn around. And all the while, every foot pound was the valley of the shadow of death. Valley of the shadow of death. You're going to run through the valley of the shadow of death. And I look down at my watch and I go, oh, it's been a mile. And I turn around and I'm on Main Street. And I look down and there's the VA cemetery. And I look up and I see the cemetery that's up on the hill. And I realize I've just run through the valley of the shadow of death. I didn't know it. the first time, but this time I will know it as I run back. And I just thought that was so profound that the God of the universe would bother to show me ahead of time. It's going to be hard, but you're going to make it. And I'm walking with you through it. And what we really uncovered through the trauma therapy and everything else was, deep childhood trauma, sexual abuse. And it wasn't just one or two people, it was many. It was inside my own home. And it's just been really eye-opening, and I kept doubting and wondering, this can't be true. How could this possibly be? But yet, the more and more we got into it, the more and more all of the compasses were pointing north. And you can spread down 1,000 compasses on the ground, and they all point the same direction. And so when you started tying those in with some of the secondary effects of highly traumatized children, and so to be able to see all of those things, that God would reveal all of that to me in the season, and yet I am given tools. That has been just something that, man, God has worked miracles in my life this year. Miracles. I am not the person that came into 2020 back in January. I am a completely different person with a completely different understanding of how good God is.
He often does that so much. He prepares us for wherever he's taking us next. And the fact that you knew it was going to be difficult, but you knew that he was with you every step of the way. So you knew that going in, but were there ever times throughout this process that you were like, okay, God, where are you? Or like, are you here? Are you working? Like, I know you said this stuff going in, but did you ever have those questions in the midst of all of that?
One of the things that I keep going back to is that God has never left me. He has never forsaken me. Even when I was a little 3-year-old girl being groomed for the things that would come, the sexual abuse, the prostitution, the other things, he never, ever was far from me. And that kind of thing just I think that has been my big lesson throughout this last year. And there were so many times that I just thought, I can't continue. I can't keep doing this. And he brought, God in his goodness and his faithfulness brought so many people into the picture. And I think that, my prayer warriors, I have an entire huge prayer team that has been really sisters shoulder to shoulder. My battle buddies that have been at my side. I've been at their side all year too, pulling me up off the battleground. That's how I saw God working in practical, real ways. And, I mentioned there were times when I'm like, I just want out. I can't do this anymore. And suicide is always something that has knocked on my door. And that's scary to talk about as a Christian. And it's a very vulnerable thing to talk about as a Christian. And it's not that I doubted I'd have eternity. It's just that it's not that I doubted eternity. It's just that I really felt like this was too hard here on earth. It feels so shameful to say that to somebody, that maybe I don't have enough faith that God's going to turn it around. But what I've been finding too is that Jesus just sat with me in it. Just sat there. He sat Shiva, really, and had his hand on my back. And he didn't try and fix me. And he didn't try and tell me, it's going to be just great. He just sat with me, and I know it's okay. Because I do believe, how is God at work? He identifies with us in our pain and our suffering. And he knows our struggle. He's felt the struggle. And so I think that God has just done some amazing things this year to really show me that he is very much alive, very much real, and very much works.
That's awesome. I know there are people who are watching you speak right now God may be bringing some things to the surface. maybe some of the same things that you talked about with anxiety or depression or other things that are maybe coping mechanisms that are something that people are doing just to get through the day, and God may be kind of bringing some of those things to the surface. What would you say to someone who may be experiencing some of the same things you were experiencing, maybe of like, okay, I'm seeing these things, but I'm not sure what to do with these things?
That's a good question. I would say that, well, there's a couple things I would say. The message is this. If you're here and you're listening to this, you're still standing. And so am I. So God has you here for a purpose, for a reason. You are at the edge of the precipice. And I'm not sure if you should be afraid or excited. I think you should be excited, but it might feel, I think C.S. Lewis said something like, I never realized that grief felt so much like fear. But you're still standing. And I think the next thing that people should know, because I have felt like this for so long, I thought I was alone. And you're not alone. If you're struggling with these kinds of feelings or thoughts, you're not alone. And that we have hope, not just on an earthly level, but on an eternal level. We have hope because there's help. And I'm not just talking about, this ethereal, Holy Spirit help. Yes, he's so powerful, I can't even tell you. He is so sufficient. His grace is enough for us. But we also have the body of believers for help. We have the church. We have sisters and brothers in Christ. We have pastors. We have friends. We have family. Some of us have support systems that are really wide. But there's also secular help. I mean, there are therapists, there are doctors, there is medicine. Those medicines have saved my life at certain times. And I would never look at all the resources and all the tools that God has given us and neglect a single one, because he offered them to us for a reason. And so there should be no shame in using those. The only shame is not getting help. We don't have to have shame in our testimonies. And I feel like for so long, what I didn't know was shameful enough. I would never tell anybody in church that, I just had a little abuse from this one guy when I was whatever. When I found out the magnitude of the abuse that I've gone through, I just look at it and go, well, there's no shame in that. That's not on me. And to show God's glory and his healing and his goodness in the land of the living to others, that's what this is all about. It's giving the testimony, and that we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So
that's awesome. Well, that makes me think of how Paul tells us that God comforts us so that we can then comfort others. So how have you seen that at play in your life? How is God using the healing that you have been experiencing in your own life to then the outpouring of that in turn to comfort others?
It's been very interesting on this journey. The more I've written about how raw and ugly things have been, the more people have engaged and responded. And it's been surprising who has been responding. And so as I've gotten more and more honest and transparent about the walk, it's been really interesting because I'm just a little bit farther ahead in the valley, and I'm like 3/4 of the way, almost on the other side, and I'm watching people coming into the valley. And I keep saying, I'm on the other side and I'm waving to you. You can do it.
Yes.
Like, you can do it. I've done it. He's with you. He's running right next to you. Don't you see it? You can keep going. And so I kind of like the idea of, I've been comforted all the way through the valley and I'm almost out. So I'm going to turn back and embrace whoever's coming through at the end of the race to cheer them on as they break the ribbon. And I feel like that has been, that's been the joy of the trial. But for the joy set before him, we endured. And so we pick up that cross and we just keep going because we know that there's something incredible at the end of the race. And it's to cheer somebody else on.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, we would love to keep this discussion going. This is not the end of the discussion. Leigh is going to make herself available. We are going to host a Zoom chat, so you'll see the link at the end of this video. We would love for you to join us and continue this conversation together. So, Leigh, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing all that God's doing in your life with us today.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Holly.
it. You
It's
bet.
been an honor.